What's up, everybody, and welcome to Vita Exculta, the Cultivated Life. My name is Ben, I'm a child of God and an addict, and today we're going to be going through a video by Teresa Lewis. Her channel is called Lewis Psychology, and this video is about how gut microbiome affects your mood, specifically your serotonin levels. 95% of serotonin is created and contained in the gut, not in the brain. And the food you eat and how you live your life affects your gut microbiome, which affects your mood. And if you're trying to stay sober, you have all the symptoms because you probably have low serotonin, which is emotional volatility. It's a lack of impulse control. It's trouble sticking to your goals. You make a plan, but you can't stick to it. And this is because not a lack of willpower, but because you do not have the right brain chemistry backing you up. It's a mechanical failure. Let's get into the video.
95% of serotonin is produced and stored in the gut, not the brain.
Remember, serotonin is not happiness. Serotonin is impulse control, and a lack of serotonin is emotional volatility.
Research has uncovered a connection between your gut bacteria and depression. In your lower intestine and colon, there is a garden of microscopic bacteria, fungi and viruses. This collection of organisms is called the gut microbiome. Now, individually, they are minuscule, but collectively, they weigh about the same as your brain. And when fed the right food, they become an incredible pharmacy. This
is very important, and we'll get into this more later in the video. But what she says here is when fed the right food. So if you're putting junk in, you're going to be getting junk out.
Produce vital chemicals that are key to your immune system, and they produce neurotransmitters such as GABA and serotonin. GABA has a calming effect on the body and mind, and serotonin plays a crucial role in regulating mood, sleep, appetite, and pain sensitivity. Let's look at Emily. She has always been known for her cheerful and outgoing nature, but after a long course of antibiotics, she found herself plagued by a persistent feeling of sadness. Emily was eventually diagnosed with depression. Now, what is really interesting here is that she had a happy childhood, no traumas, a good relationship, and supportive friends. So the depression made no sense to her. But one day she stumbled upon a fascinating article about the connection between the gut and mental health. She learned that antibiotics actually kill off the good gut bacteria, and this can cause depression. So, doing some further research, Emily decided to take charge of her gut health and started to incorporate probiotic-rich foods such as live natural yogurt, sauerkraut and kimchi into her diet. These foods contain live bacteria that helped populate her gut with beneficial microbes. And to further support her gut health, she minimised processed foods and refined sugars, which are known to kill off the good bacteria.
I've been doing keto for a while. I've lost a lot of weight. One thing I have to watch out for, though, just like too much sugar can mess up your gut microbiome, too much artificial sugar can also mess up your gut microbiome. So if you're doing keto or carnivore or just low carb and you're cutting out sugars, be careful about how much artificial sweeteners that you're ingesting.
So as time passed, Emily noticed little changes. She began to experience improved digestion, increased energy levels, and a more stable mood. Her depression started to lift, and she felt more resilient and better equipped to handle life's challenges. Now, as a psychotherapist, I'm more than aware that treating depression isn't always as simple as changing your diet. Depression is a complex and chronic mood disorder that's influenced by many factors, including genetics, environment, and your history. But what I'm trying to illustrate is that a vast amount of research has shown a definite link between your gut microbiome and your mental health. For example, scientists transplanted poo from depressed mice into sterile mice. Now, the sterile mice had no gut microbes, but once the poo transplant had taken place, the previously sterile mice demonstrated behavioural and physiological features characteristic of depression. Researchers are now experimenting with fecal microbiota transplants in humans, and this has shown improvements in bipolar disorder, depression, insulin sensitivity, Crohn's disease, as well as reductions in anxiety and ADHD symptoms. So you can see that researchers are moving towards the development of microbiota-based interventions in the treatment of depression. For example, there are now a lot of studies that illustrate how probiotics reduce depression and anxiety symptoms. Now, researchers are calling these probiotics psychobiotics, and the main constituent of these psychobiotics is the bifidobacterium and lactobacilli families. So, fermented foods that contain lactic acid, such as cultured milk and yogurt products, sauerkraut, and sourdough bread, have been found to increase levels of the bifidobacteria and lactobacilli families. I think it's really empowering that you can increase serotonin by the food you eat. And this really conflicts with the notion that you need antidepressants because you have a chemical imbalance in your brain.
So you have an imbalance in your life. You're not getting enough exercise. You're not eating the right foods. You're not in the right environments. Remember what they tell you in recovery: people, places, and things. Things in this case being food. Places in this case being sitting on the couch, spending too much time sedentary, not moving enough. The imbalance in your brain is an effect, not the cause. The cause is the imbalance in your life.
Remember, 95% of serotonin is actually produced and stored in the gut, not the brain. The chemical imbalance theory originally came from pharmaceutical companies as a way of marketing their antidepressants. And if you think about it, there is not and never has been a test to measure your brain chemicals. You cannot measure neurotransmitters via a blood test, MRI scan, or a CT scan. I'm not saying don't use antidepressants, but I do believe that rather than relying so heavily on antidepressants, we do need to address the root cause of depression via psychological therapy and increase the growth and diversity of your gut microbiota. So your gut talks to your brain and your brain talks to your gut. The communication is bidirectional. Your gut and brain send messages via your vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve connects the gut and brain through what is called the gut-brain axis, all of which play a vital role in sleep, pain, mood, hunger and stress. It communicates information from the gut to your brain using neurotransmitters such as serotonin and glutamate and gut hormones. Suddenly, the idea of having a gut instinct makes sense. So if you ever notice how language is rich with gut-based expressions, if you ever had a gut-wrenching experience or butterflies in your stomach. Your emotions, brain and gut are intricately connected. In fact, your gut is frequently called your second brain. It even has its own nervous system, the enteric nervous system. The enteric nervous system is embedded in the lining of your gastrointestinal tract, beginning in your esophagus and extending down to your anus. It consists of more than 500 million neurons. So scientists are now recognising the importance of a healthy and diverse gut microbiome in the role of good mental health. So are you going to make some changes to your diet to improve the growth and diversity of your microbiome? Let me know in the comments.
So the important takeaways from this video is just because you go to the doctor and he wants to give you pills doesn't mean that you have to take those pills. They're always trying to market you something, get you to take something, take this prescription, take that prescription. And in some cases, for some people, you might need them. But it's just a Band-Aid for the symptom. It's not a fix for the cause. So you have to figure out what the actual cause is and treat that actual cause, which most of the time is your life is out of balance. This is what has led you down the path of addiction. This is what has led you to self-medicate because you haven't figured out the root cause and how to deal with that root cause.
Trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi live on or inside of us, and maintaining a good, balanced relationship with them is to our advantage. Together, they form the gut microbiome, a rich ecosystem that performs a variety of functions in our bodies. The bacteria in our guts can break down food the body can't digest, produce important nutrients, regulate the immune system, and protect against harmful germs. We don't yet have the blueprint for exactly which good bacteria a robust gut needs, but we do know that it's important for a healthy microbiome to have a variety of bacterial species. Many factors affect our microbiomes, including our environment, medications like antibiotics, and even whether we were delivered by C-section or not. Diet, too, is emerging as one of the leading influences on the health of our guts. And while we can't control all these factors, we can manipulate the balance of our microbes by paying attention to what we eat.
This is the main thing that we're going to be looking at in this video, not necessarily antibiotics or whether or not you're delivered by C-section. Those are things that you really can't control. If you get sick enough, you're going to have to take antibiotics, although I do feel like they're overprescribed. But the purpose of this video is to focus on what are we eating and how can we change what we're eating to get better results, to get better feedback from our gut microbiomes.
Dietary fiber from foods like fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, and whole grains is the best fuel for gut bacteria. When bacteria digest fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids that nourish the gut barrier, improve immune function, and can help prevent inflammation, which reduces the risk of cancer. And the more fiber you ingest, the more fiber-digesting bacteria colonize your gut.
So one thing I've been doing is focusing on eating a lot of vegetables. I'm not eating any fruits except sometimes some berries, but I have to get more of my calorie intake from high fiber vegetables to accompany all of the meat and fat that I'm eating on the keto diet.
So what goes wrong with our gut bacteria when we eat low-fiber processed foods? Lower fiber means less fuel for the gut bacteria, essentially starving them until they die off. This results in less diversity and hungry bacteria. In fact, some can even start to feed on the mucus lining. We also know that specific foods can affect gut bacteria. In one recent microbiome study, scientists found that fruits, vegetables, tea, coffee, red wine, and dark chocolate were correlated with increased bacterial diversity. These foods contain polyphenols, which are naturally occurring antioxidant compounds. On the other hand, foods high in dairy fat, like whole milk, and sugar-sweetened sodas were correlated with decreased diversity.
One thing I do need to cut out is milk.
How food is prepared also matters. Minimally processed, fresh foods generally have more fiber and provide better fuel. So lightly steamed, sautéed, or raw vegetables are typically more beneficial than fried dishes. There are also ways of preparing food that can actually introduce good bacteria, also known as probiotics, into your gut. Fermented foods are teeming with helpful probiotic bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. Originally used as a way of preserving foods before the invention of refrigeration, fermentation remains a traditional practice all over the world. Foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, tempeh, and kombucha provide variety and vitality to our diets. Yogurt is another fermented food that can introduce helpful bacteria into our guts. That doesn't necessarily mean that all yogurt is good for us, though. Brands with too much sugar and not enough bacteria may not actually help. While we're only beginning to explore the vast wilderness inside our guts, we already have a glimpse of how crucial our microbiomes are for digestive health. The great news is, we have the power to fire up the bacteria in our bellies. Fill up on fibers, fresh and fermented foods, and you can trust your gut to keep you going strong.
Thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, that means that you have an interest in making some real changes in your life, whether you're in recovery from an addiction or you're just trying to make improvements. Until next time, tend your gardens. Take 5.